You're an artist. You want to go full-time like Cala does, but you have a job. You don't have time to build an art business. So how do you find the time? Well, watch Cala's story, because that's the situation I'm helping her with. And the answer isn't to just find the time. I'm Professor Steven. I teach independent artists how to build a business around their work. Today, I'm doing an art business audit for CalaVision Art. I'm going to show you what Cala's doing right, what's getting in the way, and exactly what I'd focus on if I were running her business. If you're trying to transition out of your day job and into art full-time, this one's for you. Cala Larioni is a mixed media oil painter based in the US who's been making art for 30 years. Her work is inspired by nature and the feminine divine. She paints botanical forms, organic textures, women in nature, all of it working together to evoke healing, reflection, and transformation. Her work is absolutely stunning. She's been selling work on and off for most of those 30 years, mostly to people she knows. But she officially launched CalaVision Art earlier this year, and she's currently working full-time as an event producer, which pays the bills but takes up her time in unpredictable cycles. Sometimes she has weeks to focus on her art, and then event production takes over for weeks and her art business loses momentum. Cala also told me she has health issues, which means she has to be very intentional about where she spends her energy. More hustle can't be the answer. So she asked me how to help her build and grow her business in a way that's sustainable for her. Her goal is to eventually replace her events income with her art income, and she's already built a foundation that makes that absolutely possible. Before I get into my diagnosis and what I'd change, I want to show you 3 strengths that Cala's already built. Always start with your strengths, because whatever your goal is, leaning on your strengths are exactly what will take you there. First, Cala has a powerful story to tell as the foundation for CalaVision Art's brand. She grew up in an Italian Catholic family surrounded by sacred imagery, icons of the feminine divine, and the kind of art that asks you to slow down, to engage in spiritual contemplation. She spent years traveling in what sounds to me like a spiritual journey, experiencing nature as she moved and making and selling art along the way. Then she found herself living alone in a remote cabin with nature as her companion. She discovered that the same spiritual connection she'd found in those childhood icons was also available to her in the natural world, in botanical forms, the cycles of growth, and the same feminine divine that's in Mother Nature. Cala says she creates art as an invitation to slow down, to reconnect with nature, and to honor the deep sacredness of being alive. In a culture that rewards speed and certainty, she wants her paintings to invite stillness, curiosity, and wonder. That's a mission, and it's something the world needs. The problem is, her story is buried and underutilized in her marketing, but I'll come back to that later. Cala's second strength is her deep experience. She's been developing and refining her technical skills for 30 years. And I see progression in her work that says she found her artistic voice a long time ago. And that voice has progressed with her as she's grown. She's also sold art before, and even though she'll tell you it wasn't an official business, an unofficial business is still a business with real customers giving you real money. I bet she's learned something about selling art that's just intuitive to her now. She just needs to reach in and resurface and use that knowledge. Cala's third strength is the infrastructure that she's built since the beginning of this year. She's built all the pieces of a functional art business. She has a beautiful website with a shop to sell original work, commissions, and prints. She's got a printer and the infrastructure set up to fulfill print orders. She has a presence on Instagram and TikTok, and she started a newsletter to connect directly to customers off of social media. And I think her early focus on building that infrastructure was the right one. But I sense a deep desire to keep adding building blocks on top of that. Let's add a schedule of regular shows, start attending art markets, build relationships with galleries, look for new ways to market. But Cala doesn't have time to do any of that with a full-time job. And the answer is she doesn't need to build anything else. She needs to get what she's already built working for her to achieve consistent income. Cala has enough infrastructure in place to support a full-time art business right now. Infrastructure isn't the bottleneck for her business. So what is limiting CalaVision Art? It's something that I see a lot of artists do early on when they're getting started with their business. So you need to check to see if you're doing this too. When you're building an art business and working full-time, you have limited time and energy to devote to your art business. The instinct is to look to other artists who have already built a business and to see if you can learn anything from them about how to be successful. Maybe they can give you some shortcuts. So you follow other artists, and what do you see? They're on TikTok and Instagram, Etsy, Pinterest, YouTube, Patreon, their own website. They go to shows and markets, they're featured in galleries, they're selling original work, prints, commissions, merch, contract gigs, maybe education. Do you see the problem here? In your search for shortcuts to grow your business, you've landed on an overwhelming list of things that you have to build. And I don't know about you, but I love building things. It's fun. I could spend years building and feeling like I'm making progress without selling a single thing. Because when I do that, when I spend all my time building, I don't have enough attention to give to any one part of my business to make it good at selling things. I'm too busy building over here. So my sales are low, and it feels like I need to build more. That's a vicious cycle. But the other thing that low sales trigger is a feeling like you need to be broader in your marketing to try to attract as many different people as you can into your business. But the problem with being broad with marketing is that it doesn't stand out to anyone. It doesn't speak to anyone specifically enough to get them to take an action that would lead to sales. I see evidence of all of that in Cala's business. She told me she feels like she needs to keep adding building blocks. I see that lack of specificity in her brand positioning. The headline on her website says her work is for people who feel deeply, who live boldly, dream in color, who have wild souls. Her page talks about seekers, healers, the ones blooming, people who need to see themselves reflected in something sacred. Her TikTok bio says she's a tree hugger and a beauty hunter. These are all true descriptions of Cala and her work, but they're different descriptions pointing in different directions. And all of them are a little bit general. Let's look at the phrase people who feel deeply. Who are these people? Are they women or men or both or neither? Gender doesn't always matter, but in this case, Cala's work is inspired by the feminine divine. Who's most likely to be inspired by her depiction of the feminine divine? Well, probably people who already identify with the feminine part. And our language doesn't perfectly describe everyone who identifies with the feminine, but I think it's okay to say my work is for women. And what are they feeling deeply? Is it anger, rage, overwhelm, anxiety? Is that deep feeling a deep sense of peace that already exists? When I look at Cala's positioning as a whole, it suggests that her art is for people who aren't at peace. They're seeking peace, but I never see that explicitly. I get the feeling that part of that is because Cala wants to keep her space inspirational and positive, and it is. But it's a balance. She doesn't name the problem she solves and who she solves it for very clearly. Most of her buyers will not see themselves reflected in her space. They won't be able to connect Cala and her work with that core need for peace, so they'll move on without buying anything. Cala also told me that she thinks her ideal buyers are people who have a spiritual bent, but she's also hesitant to include that overtly in her positioning. She doesn't want to leave anyone out, and I love inclusion, but everything about Cala's brand is spiritual. Her inspiration, her connection to nature, her mission, the feeling that she wants people to feel, and how they get there through spiritual contemplation and quiet moments with her work. People who aren't spiritual will miss the whole thing. They'll see pretty pictures with pretty colors that they can get at a fraction of the price at TJ Maxx. They will drive Cala's pricing power down if she tries to sell to them. And I see evidence of that too. Cala's work is way underpriced given her experience and her skill and the value that she brings to spiritual women seeking moments of peace through quiet contemplation. So the answer for Cala isn't to build more, it's to stop building. And the answer isn't to broaden her potential customer base to more types of people. It's to get very specific about who her work is for and to build everything she has already in place around that so that it begins to work for her and begins to drive consistent sales. So that's my diagnosis, an extraordinary brand story that isn't fully visible yet. 30 years of experience and a strong body of work and enough infrastructure in place to support full-time income. The missing piece is specificity. Cala's first priority is to clarify her brand story. Everything else in this plan depends on that. Your brand story is the foundation for every other decision in your business. That's what it means to be brand-led. Your brand shapes your marketing, your content, who you speak to, how you price, and how your buyers experience your work when they find you. When your brand story is unclear, all of those downstream parts of your business become more difficult. Right now, Cala's brand story is unclear, but the good news is that I see it in there. It's just a little bit buried. Cala grew up surrounded by Italian Catholic icons, sacred images of the feminine divine, art designed to slow you down and invite contemplation. She left that world, but she kept its spiritual foundation. She wandered, and then she lived alone in nature. And what she discovered was that that same sacred feminine presence that she felt in those childhood icons now lived for her in nature, in the cycles of growth and season and return. Her paintings are icons, not in a religious sense, but in how they function for people who experience them. They're objects of quiet contemplation that put you in the presence of the feminine divine in nature. They do what sacred art has always done. They create a space for stillness in a world that rewards speed and survival. That is a specific, powerful, and completely ownable brand story. Her work is for women who are already on a spiritual journey that mirrors her own, seeking peace and healing through moments of quiet contemplation. It's not for everyone. Her work is created just for them. So if you're watching this and you're struggling with your own brand story, I teach a simple 3-part framework that can get you there. And go back and listen to what I just said. These 3 parts are in there. That framework includes a spark, a drive, and a message. What sparked you to start creating art? What drives you to keep going? And what message does your work send into the world? Those 3 things, told in pieces across your content, are what build a brand that attracts the right buyers before you even try to sell anything. Cala knows her buyer better than me. I built a hypothesis about who her brand is for and the value that it delivers by studying what she's presented publicly. So I could be wrong. Cala might use my hypothesis as a starting point and build on top of it, or she might scrap it and come up with her own entirely. The point is, at this stage of her business where she's not yet selling consistently, it's still a hypothesis. So Cala's second priority is to test that hypothesis, to refine it through something called customer discovery, through customer interviews, formal planned conversations with people who have either bought your work or who fit whatever profile you've described, with open-ended questions about who they are, what they're looking for, how they found you, what your work means to them. Those conversations will teach you the language your buyers use to describe what they need. And when you use that knowledge to shape your content, your website, how you describe yourself, and what you want them to do in your social media bios, how you engage with them in your newsletters, you'll start attracting the right buyers consistently. So if you're watching this and you're hesitant to get specific about your buyer because you don't want to leave anyone out, remember this: specificity is what makes people feel found. A woman who needs exactly what Cala's work offers will be seen by a brand that speaks directly to her. A brand that tries to speak to everyone won't make anyone feel that way. So those are Cala's first two priorities: clarify your brand story and test your buyer hypothesis through customer discovery. Those two things feed directly into Cala's third priority. Cala's third priority is to focus her energy on one sales funnel in the short term that has the best chance of providing consistent monthly income. And she has several options. She has an inventory of original work. She sells commissions. She sells prints of her original work. And she sells custom created embellished prints of her work, where she prints her work and then she paints over it. The infrastructure is in place to sell all of those things through her website. She has a presence on Instagram and TikTok that she could use to drive people to her site. She has a printer and the ability to fulfill orders of whatever is purchased by buyers. But none of these items are selling consistently yet. Part of that is because of the lack of specificity with brand story and ideal buyers. So solving those problems will help. But once those things are in place, Cala needs to put them to use, selling something consistently. I think that means focusing in the near term on a sales funnel from Instagram to her website to buy prints. Here's why. She doesn't yet have a consistent pipeline of commissions work or custom embellished print orders. Her current inventory of original work at current pricing isn't large enough to give her a big enough financial cushion, even if she sold everything today. And she probably doesn't have the spare time to produce enough original work to generate consistent monthly income. But her original work inventory is an asset that she can get working in the background on her behalf to sell prints. She has the infrastructure set up to sell and fulfill print orders digitally on the side without having to manage a schedule of events or to show up at certain places at certain times. It doesn't require her to paint another piece. It can run in the background while she's working her full-time job managing an event. What those pieces aren't doing yet are working together as a connected system, pointed at a specific buyer to achieve a specific goal. Here's what that system needs to look like. Cala's content on Instagram gives her specific buyer a reason to follow her. That content reflects Cala's brand story, the icons, the feminine divine in nature, Cala's invitation to stillness and quiet contemplation. It probably even provides moments of quiet contemplation, exactly as her work does. It's not trying to speak to everyone. It's speaking directly to spiritual women who seek that. Cala also needs to work content into her mix that highlights her and her story. Right now, most of Cala's content shows her work and the nature that inspires it. I wouldn't stop doing that. But buyers don't just buy your art. They follow and buy from artists who they feel connected to. I want to see more of Cala in her content. And right now, Cala's content doesn't frequently have a call to action to do anything. She needs to work into her content mix specific calls to go to her bio and click a link to purchase a print. That link should point directly to the checkout page where prints are purchased, not to the home page or not to a collection that buyers have to sort through. A path like that strips out the number of decisions that a buyer has to make before they make a purchase. It helps them not get lost on their way through their path to purchase. Cala mentioned that her schedule is sporadic and unpredictable, that her business loses momentum when her full-time work pulls her away. Right now, that's showing up in a lack of consistency in posting content. My hope here is that by focusing on one sales funnel from Instagram to print sales and not building anything else, Cala can focus whatever time she does have to get more consistent with content posting. That consistency, when combined with a focused brand story, a specific audience to target, and the right mix of content, will begin to expand Cala's follower count and her reach. So set a realistic but consistent target for posting. If you can't post every day, try every other day or a set number of times per week on a set schedule. I also want to talk about pricing here because I think it's directly connected to how Cala's print sales funnel will perform. Cala prices her original work by square inch plus materials. It's a common formula and it's understandable, especially when you're first getting started. But it's a formula that prices the inputs, not the output. and the output, peace, and stillness that buyers get from living with one of Cala's paintings is worth significantly more than the canvas, the paint, and the hours that Cala spends putting them together. I think Cala's original work is significantly underpriced, and not by a little. I'd be experimenting with prices 2 to 3 times higher. That might make you feel uncomfortable when you're not yet consistently selling anything, but higher prices for your original work could actually accelerate your print sales. When your original work is priced at a level that signals serious collecting, prints become a compelling access point. A buyer who loves your work and can't afford the original will see a print as a meaningful investment. It signals that the work is worth owning however they can. So here's what I want every artist watching to take away from Cala's story. If you're trying to transition from a full-time job to full-time art, the answer is almost never to do more. It's to get more specific about who your work is for, what it gives them, and how they find their way to buying it. More platforms won't solve that. More products won't solve that. But a clear brand story, a specific buyer, and a funnel pointed directly at that buyer can generate consistent income, even with limited time and limited energy. Cala has 30 years of experience, a powerful brand story, and the infrastructure to do this. Her priority now is focusing all of that. Cala, you described yourself as a late bloomer, and you said you were bumbling around a bit. But what I see is someone who has spent decades developing a brilliant artistic voice that's expressed in something that so many women need right now. So you're not late. You're actually here right on time. This is your moment. So get specific, get consistent, and let the infrastructure you've already built do the work for you. I can't wait to see what CalaVision Art looks like from here. And if you'd like me to help with your art business this way, book an audit with me. Link's in my bio when you're ready.